Terror in New York City. Questions about the suspect accused of killing 8 people and injuring 11 others near the World Trade Center. Heartbeat bill. Congress holds a hearing on a bill that would ban abortion once a heartbeat is detected. We'll tell you about the chances of it passing. Amy Barrett confirmed. Senators approve the Catholic nominee who was told her dogma lives loudly within her. And preparing for All Souls Day. We'll take you to the American cemetery in Italy that Pope Francis will visit tomorrow. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, November 1st, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C. Thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Police say an attack in New York City that killed 8 and injured 11 was done in the name of ISIS and had been planned for weeks.
Based on the information we have at this moment, this was an act of terror and a particularly cowardly act of terror.
29-year-old Sayfullo Saipov, an immigrant from Uzbekistan, is accused of driving a rented truck down a bike path in Lower Manhattan. Police say the attack follows, quote, almost to a T, instructions ISIS puts out on social media channels. President Trump is calling the suspect in the attack an animal. This comes as world leaders are offering their thoughts, condolences, and prayers for the victims. 6 of the 8 people killed were from outside of the U.S., but New York's mayor says every one of those victims will forever be New Yorkers. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee joins us with more reaction tonight from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. Officials here at the State Department say they are closely monitoring the investigation, working with the FBI and the New York City Police Department. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says the attack has turned out to be an international event because of the number of foreign victims. Secretary Rex Tillerson welcoming Belgium's foreign minister to the State Department today. Belgian citizens are among the victims from Tuesday's terrorist attack in New York.
We now know we have one Belgian citizen who died in the attack yesterday and 5 Argentinian citizens, and we have additional Belgian citizens that were injured as well.
The Belgian foreign minister confirming the news, saying, "I am deeply saddened to announce a Belgian victim in Manhattan. I express my condolences to the family and friends." Argentina's president saying the attack has hit all Argentines hard. The 5 Argentines killed were friends celebrating the 30th anniversary of their high school graduation.
In Somalia, Afghanistan, ieri a New York.
Pope Francis offered his prayers for the victims today from the Vatican. He said he is praying the hearts of the terrorists are converted and that the world would be freed from hate in the name of God. So far, it appears the suspect, Sayfullo Saipov, was inspired by ISIS. Robin Simcox, a terrorism expert, says allies must be on the same page to confront the terror group. He says Tuesday's attack is a reminder of how effective ISIS has been spreading their propaganda around the world.
ISIS, via its use of social media, has been able to get its message out much further, much wider than other terrorist groups in the past. It's been quite innovative that way because it still uses some of those techniques that other groups like Al-Qaeda did, the face-to-face personal contacts, things like that, but it's been able to use social media on top of it, and it's made it a really effective strategy.
Simcox says there's no easy way to defeat ISIS extremist ideology, but he says the best way is for the United States and its allies is to promote their values like liberty and freedom. Lauren?
Seems like this man had been in the United States for years. What else do we know about him?
Well, Lauren, we know he's originally from Uzbekistan, a Central Asian country that was originally part of the former Soviet Union, but the Department of Homeland Security says he had moved to the U.S. legally in 2010s under what's called the Diversity Immigrant Visa Program, also known as the Green Card Lottery, which allows immigrants from countries with lower rates of immigration to come to the U.S. as a resident. So right now authorities are investigating where he may have been radicalized here in the United States, actually. Lauren?
And that is something that right now the president is talking about disbanding that program, saying it doesn't work. Thank you so much. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. President Trump is proclaiming November National Adoption Month. In a statement, the president writes, "Adoption is a life-changing and life-affirming act that signals that no child in America, born or unborn, is unwanted or unloved. Lawmakers in the House hear testimony on a bill to protect unborn babies today. This would ban abortions as soon as the doctor can detect the baby's heartbeat. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi brings us the story. Good evening, Jason.
Lauren, the Heartbeat Protection Act drew powerful testimony here at the Capitol, including from a doctor who regrets performing abortions. In her soft-spoken voice, listen to what Dr. Kathy Altman calls herself.
I love to meet adults that I have delivered, but it's always bittersweet because I'm reminded of all the people I will never meet because I aborted them. It also reminds me that I am a mass murderer.
Representative Steve King sponsors the Heartbeat bill with 169 co-sponsors. He says Congress needs to pass the bill now because President Trump will likely have the chance to appoint more pro-life justices, and they might be more open to accepting the bill's premise. Representative King hopes the bill will be brought forward on the day of the March for Life in January.
Life is priority over liberty. That's the question that's before us today. Is human life sacred in all of its forms, or isn't it? And I think the answer that's universal across America to that question is yes.
Lawmakers in 17 states have introduced similar heartbeat bills. Courts struck it down in North Dakota and in Arkansas. And Ohio's Republican Governor John Kasich vetoed his state's bill, saying if it became law, it would have resulted in an expensive and losing court battle. Lauren?
Well, in many pro-life bills, there are exemptions for rape and incest. Does this bill have those exemptions?
It does not. This heartbeat bill provides only one exception, only if the abortion would save the life of the mother from a physical disorder or illness.
Thank you so much. Jason Calvi reporting from Capitol Hill. Republicans pushed the release of the first major rewrite of the tax code in 30 years. They've pushed it to tomorrow. It was originally planned to go out today. Tax slashing proponent Grover Norquist tells Jason Calvi the GOP bill will boost business and lead to more jobs.
They've been undoing stupid and destructive regulations, and now the tax cut. Reagan did both deregulation and tax cuts. That's how he got his growth.
The bill is expected to scrap the Johnson Amendment, which bans churches and other nonprofits from endorsing political candidates. President Trump says he wants it passed by Christmas. Democrats say the GOP plan favors the rich. Joining us now from the Capitol is Representative Diane Black, a Republican from Tennessee, also the chairman of the House Budget Committee and a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, the Chief Tax Writing Committee. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We expected this tax reform bill to be unveiled today. Is there infighting? What's the holdup?
No, it is actually because it is such a large bill and we've had a few changes here or there. And so writing the text and making sure the text is exactly the way we want it is very important. In addition to that, every time we make a little change, there is a committee called the Joint Committee on Taxation that must score our bill. And so rather than rushing and putting something out, as we had intended on doing today, we decided that we would make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's crossed. So American people will get to see our plan tomorrow, Thursday morning at 9 a.m.
9 a.m. Now, this is what we know that is in the bill, the proposed plan. You're going to reduce the tax brackets from 7 to 3 or 4, reduce the corporate tax rate, and we are going to get one page, is that right, to write our taxes on, and that'll be it? We're handing it in?
Yeah, so about 95% of the American people will be able to file their taxes on a postcard size, like a 5.5 by 7. And we're just so delighted to have simplicity, and I know the American people are too, because I hear this all the time in my district, just make it simple.
Yeah, well, I also hear a lot of things about 401k retirement accounts, which a lot of people use right now to save for their future, to save for the days when they're over 65 and don't have an income. Is it going to happen that we are going to reduce the amount of money that can be put into those accounts?
Let me just say this, and I cannot give you the details because, again, they're going to be filed, or they're filed, and we're going to see them tomorrow. But we want people to save. We especially want people to save for their later years. because we know Social Security and Medicare are already in a position where they're stressed. And so we're going to make sure that our policy gives people that opportunity to do that savings so they can make sure in their older years they're going to be cared for.
Also, the National Association of Home Builders has come out already criticizing this proposed plan, saying that it's going to diminish the mortgage interest deduction and that is not a good thing for American people and middle-class families who are going to buy houses. The full statement: lawmakers missed a golden opportunity to give the American people a tax reform package that would boost middle-class families and promote greater housing opportunity for Americans across the economic spectrum. What is your response to that?
We want to be sure that on that single postcard that people will be able to deduct their mortgage. It has always been our plan to do that. They also wanted to make that a credit as well, and so we've been working with them to give the middle income the best opportunities that we can.
All right, well, the American people will have the opportunity to judge tomorrow at 9 a.m. Representative Diane Black of Tennessee, thank you for joining us.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
White House Communications Director Hope Hicks will be interviewed by Special Counsel Robert Mueller's team. This comes after 2 of the president's former campaign aides were indicted in the Russia investigation earlier this week. Hicks has been one of President Trump's closest and longest-serving aides. A Catholic cardinal in Catalonia says he is praying for a peaceful resolution to the region's bid for independence. Cardinal Juan José Omaya says he deeply loves Catalonia, but, quote, I also love Spain and I love the Europe we belong to. The Catalan region declared independence from Spain late last month. The Spanish government and world powers, including the U.S., strongly oppose the move. You can find out more about the Catholic reaction to events in Catalonia and other news from around the world by visiting CatholicNewsAgency.com. Authorities in China expel hundreds of Christian missionaries from South Korea and continue to close churches. The crackdown comes before new regulations begin early next year. Activists say China wants to eliminate underground Christian communities. Japan's parliament re-elects Prime Minister Shinzo Abe earlier today. Abe says his main priority is helping families raising children and the elderly. President Trump will meet with him next week in Tokyo to discuss the nuclear threat from North Korea. Coming up, Amy Barrett confirmed. The nominee, criticized by some Democrats for her Catholicism, is approved. Trouble for another judicial nominee. What the American Bar Association is saying about President Trump's pick. A federal lawsuit is filed in Indiana challenging a rule change by the Trump administration that allows more employers to opt out of covering birth control for workers. The suit was filed on behalf of 5 women, including 3 students at Notre Dame University. Under new rules issued last month, employers are allowed to cite religious or moral objections in order to end birth control coverage. One of President Trump's judicial nominees testifies before the Senate days after the American Bar Association slams his qualifications, giving him a rating of not qualified. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. The Bar Association says Steve Graz, nominated for a seat on the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, has a pro-life agenda and shows bias and lack of open-mindedness. He is the second judicial nominee from President Trump rated not qualified by the ABA, but Graz assured the Senate Judiciary Committee his personal views would not affect his rulings from the bench.
The role of a judge is to apply the law fairly and impartially, regardless of any past views or opinions.
Today's hearing focused on Mr. Graz's American Bar Association review, which cites Graz's pro-life advocacy as a concern.
You are the first Circuit Court nominee since 2006 to receive a unanimous not qualified rating from the ABA.
Mr. Graz, your extreme anti-choice positions are a matter of public record.
Attorney Matthew Clark of the American Center for Law and Justice says the ABA's ruling is an expression of their own liberal views.
They make it crystal clear what their opposition to Steve Graz is, and it's purely based on his being pro-life. And for them, being pro-life is an ideology that they cannot tolerate on the bench.
Republican Senator Ben Sasse echoes that, saying in a statement, "It's sad that the ABA would contort their ratings process to try to tarnish Steve's professional reputation in order to drive a political agenda." Graz, the former Deputy Attorney General of Nebraska, says when the American Bar Association interviewed him, he was grilled on his views on abortion and politics.
The interviewer repeatedly used in a negative connotation the phrase "you people." And at one point, I stopped him and I said, "Sir, who do you mean by you people?" And he said, "Conservatives and Republicans."
The Susan B. Anthony List, a pro-life advocacy group, says they fully support Steve Graz's nomination. They point to the fact that as Nebraska's Chief Deputy Attorney General, Graz helped defend the state's partial birth abortion ban before the U.S. Supreme Court. Lauren.
Mark, I understand the president touted his record on judicial appointments today.
That's right. This afternoon, the president said nobody is paying attention to his appointments of federal judges. He says a big percentage of the federal court system will be changed by his administration in a short period of time. He said soon 145 federal judges could be approved.
White House correspondent Mark Irons, thank you. The Senate confirms Catholic judicial nominee Amy Barrett.
On the nomination, the ayes are 55, the nays are 43, and the nomination is confirmed.
Barrett will serve on the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. Senate Democrats attacked her Catholic faith in nomination hearings, but Republican Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley says Barrett has spoken passionately about the role faith plays in her life, and, quote, "This isn't inconsistent with being a federal judge." Democrat Senator Dianne Feinstein said of Barrett, quote, "The dogma lives loudly within you." Barrett's confirmation hearings were the latest example of religion entering into politics. This is not going away, and joining us now is Tim Carney, commentary editor of the Washington Examiner, visiting fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The U.S. Constitution says in Article 6, quote, "No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust." Do we see this with Amy Barrett?
I think that was in Dianne Feinstein's line of questioning, was clearly that the religion, that Amy Barrett's religion, was what was disqualifying. And
Catholic, being a Catholic.
Being a Catholic in whom the dogma sings too loudly. And the funny thing is that the paper that the liberal groups and Feinstein referred back to, that she had co-written with the man who's now the president of Catholic University of America, John Garvey, was a paper saying how sometimes a Catholic might need to recuse herself if she's a judge and her conscience and the law disagree. So it was a case where she was really laying out this case of how to be a Catholic and
by recusing herself,
yes,
not putting her beliefs into the law. Tomorrow, the Ways and Means Committee is going to release their proposed tax reform bill. The bishops have come out saying, hey, we have to really take care of the poor here. Do Catholic lawmakers have the responsibility to listen to them?
They have the responsibility to prayerfully consider what the bishops say. But bishops are not experts on tax law and that sort of thing. And one of the things that the bishops are opposing, or at least worried about, is increasing the standard deduction. And this is an interesting thing, because if you increase the standard deduction, then somebody like me might no longer have to itemize. So then the money I put in the basket no longer gets me a tax break. And they're worried that people will give less to charity in this case.
Because you don't get it written off of your taxes.
Because I don't get it written off my taxes, because I already got the tax break. So this is a situation where you're saying the bishops are trying to make sure I don't, a dad with 6 kids doesn't get a tax cut because they're afraid of charitable contributions going down. So that's a situation where they are lobbying for what they see is good, but it's certainly not something that carries the weight of dogma.
With Republican control of Congress and the president who says that he is pro-life, why is it so hard to get pro-life legislation passed? Jason Calvi reported earlier on the heartbeat bill to protect unborn babies.
Well, first of all, there's still a judicial filibuster in the U.S. Senate, so the Republicans, having 52 seats, can't pass something around a filibuster. Second, even those 52 Republican votes include some pro-choice Republicans. And the fact is that there are still lots of sort of Republicans representing suburban districts where the view on abortion is pretty mixed. There aren't hardcore pro-lifers there, and so these Republicans are very sensitive to playing to that vote and trying to appear moderate on the issue, because ultimately these are politicians and
have to get reelected
a lot
in
of them
2018.
Consider their job to be getting reelected.
And they consider their job to be maybe their God. But that's an opinion, so we'll leave the opinions to you. Tim Carney, commentary editor of the Washington Examiner.
Thank you
so much. Cardinal Donald Wuerl, Archbishop of Washington, calls for unity among all people to tackle, quote, the persistent evil of racism. The Cardinal says the sin is felt across our society. He adds, quote, it is our faith that calls us to confront and overcome racism. Up next, preparing for Pope Francis. The Holy Father travels to an American cemetery in Italy for All Souls Day. We'll preview the trip. And All Saints Day, all around the world. A look at how different countries celebrate this feast day. Today is All Saints Day, also known as All Hallows Day. It's an important feast day in the Catholic Church. We honor not just the men and women formerly canonized by the Church, but everyone in heaven. It's meant to help us desire to become saints ourselves. Pope Francis will celebrate the Feast of All Souls Day tomorrow with a visit to a cemetery where nearly 8,000 American soldiers who died in World War II are buried. It's the site where Allied troops landed in 1944. Our Vatican correspondent, Juliette Lindley, has more on the burial ground in Nettuno, Italy.
The stars and stripes fly majestically above the Sicily-Rome American Cemetery. It's the final resting place of veterans who died in 3 key campaigns in southern Italy against the Nazis. Today, teams of local gardeners are busy ensuring the grounds are as pristine as ever for Pope Francis' arrival. Near a bronze statue commemorating the fallen heroes, we find Father Ryan Moravitz from Duluth, Minnesota.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son.
He's here with a group of his former parishioners to pray and pay tribute to the dead.
I think anytime we go to these places, there is a great sense of honor, but also humility, of humbleness to these places. And so for me, this has become a place where I like to come to visit, if I'm able, whenever I'm back in Italy.
Included in the group is war veteran Tony Liefeld, who was a seaman on the USS Liberty. He lost 34 shipmates.
Very moving, very emotional to be here. Just remembering all of the people and that the people here did and that my own shipmates went through.
Chuck Welty is a retired Air Force officer from Jenkins, Minnesota. He and his family are reflecting on the sacrifice these soldiers made for their country.
Actually, kind of a theme that we've had in our pilgrimage is just remembering, the final judgment, and I just think it's important to remember our final judgment as well as to honor those who, gave their all in support of our country.
When the family of fallen servicemen come here, officials offer a personal experience. Melanie Resto, superintendent of the cemetery, says it's called sanding the tomb.
We take sand from the landing beach and we highlight their names. We place sand in the etched, engraved names so that it brings the name to life. In a way, it brings the service member back to life.
Tomorrow, Pope Francis will be commemorating not just the thousands of American servicemen who are buried here, but all those who have died in wars throughout history. And after the Mass, he will return to Rome to visit the site where 300 Italian civilians were killed by Nazi troops in 1944. In Nettuno, near Anzio, Italy, Juliette Lindley for EWTN News Nightly.
What a beautiful place that looks like. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We leave you tonight with a look at celebrations around the world for All Saints Day. You'll see images from Belarus, Poland, France, and the Philippines. Good night, and God bless you.